Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining the NSAR and West Midlands Combined Authority webinar. This is exclusive to the West Midlands providers. We have had some technical difficulties, so we do apologise about that. So you lovely lot get me, unfortunately, for the whole session. We totally appreciate this is a really busy time for everybody, and obviously we want to safeguard apprentices due to the coronavirus. However, we feel it's really important to prepare for a lot of the changes that are going to be happening with the Apprenticeship Service. So we've teamed up with NSAR and also ESFA just to make sure that we're supporting or how we can support smaller employers. Earlier on today, we did an intermediary webinar. So we wanted to try and prepare those guys for how they can support with smaller employers. Today, we're going to take you through the Apprenticeship Intermediary Service and guide you through how you're able to support your SME employers in the West Midlands region. Just to give everybody a bit of an idea of where we are, we have been the first region to offer these provider masterclasses. We will probably be re-recording it again today because of technical difficulties, just to make sure that we've covered it. But yeah, we are one of the first regional to actually be able to support. Okay, so we expect the webinar to take around about an hour. Appreciate everyone's time's busy, but we're working with ESFA to try and finalise the toolkit so that you'll all have a step-by-step guide for your teams and employers. We've also been joined by colleagues of the ESFA, so feel free to submit questions as we go along. However, if there are technical queries relating to any issues, anything in terms of that's not covered on the .gov website, can we ask that you email in and we will address it with the ESFA, part of the Combined Authority. So we have been asked to do that. Open to answer a couple of questions, however, just conscious of time. So yeah, Tom will throw some of those over to me and my colleagues later on. In terms of the agenda for today, so it is quite meaty. I hope you've all had your lunch. The agenda is there, so we're going to look at the aims of the webinar, how apprenticeships have changed, so a little bit of reminder. I think we've all gone through quite a lot in many years. The Apprenticeship Service. What about the impact of the end of non-levy contracts? I think that's an issue that needs to be looked at in terms of, are we prepared for that? The Apprenticeship Intermediary Service, making apprenticeships work for smaller employers. Got some nice microsite and toolkit that NSAR and ESFA have created. A little bit of call to action. You will get me again. I know quite a lot of people know me and we've talked numerous times around Levy Transfer. I think it's always good to rehash on that. A little bit of information about COVID-19 and then a provider's online delivery model. So yeah, throughout, just pop some questions and we'll send them over to us as a panel and we'll try and answer them as best as possible. If we can't, we'll then put an FAQ and address that to the Education and Skills Funding Agency. Fabulous. So, aims of the webinar. Today, we want the aims of the webinar for us to understand how apprenticeships have changed for smaller employers. We want to gain an understanding or a better understanding of how the Apprenticeship Service and awareness of how to support smaller employers with the new Apprenticeship Service. I'll introduce the Apprenticeship Service to you and present the toolkit and resources that are available. And I think what would be quite useful is to have feedback from you guys as providers in terms of how you're going to support with the smaller businesses. As mentioned, I'll be talking about Levy Transfer and we'll look at how we adapt delivery to the challenging times with COVID-19. Again, you would have received an email from myself just looking at what are the issues that you guys are facing that we're feeding back to the head of the Apprenticeship Service and ESFA. Okay, so how have apprenticeships changed? Let's remind ourselves of the journey. I think we've all agree it's been a rough couple of years. Obviously, just to remind yourselves, and no doubt you're all okay with this, in 2012, we had the Richard Review. Following this review, the Skills Funding Agency introduced the new standards and trailblazers from the relevant industries to design the new knowledge, skills and behaviours required by the apprentice in that field. As part of the government apprenticeship reforms, as we already know, in 2017 the apprenticeship levy was launched. Whether we were ready for it is a different matter. Larger businesses, as we know, were introduced to a way of engaging in funding apprenticeships. An online digital account service was hosted by .gov UK, which was also known as DAS. I think we now call it AS service. Small employers obviously then access apprenticeship funding directly through yourselves as training providers, and they've held government allocated funding contracts. These were obviously awarded by the Education and Skills Funding Agency. So we've had quite a change and shift in terms of funding. We're all aware, I think we all know how painful this process has been, not just for providers, but also levy paying employers. So what we want to do as a region is to try and ensure that we navigate the apprenticeship service by the 31st of October. So as everyone knows, that will go through. What else? Let's get rid of it all again. I think we're having a shift, and obviously with the COVID-19, we're now having obviously more transitions in terms of apprenticeships. Hopefully, we're in a stage whereby we can support, and obviously later on we've got somebody from a training provider to look at how we do that. So in January 2020, the Apprenticeship Service trials were launched, and we know that by August 2020, all the frameworks will be switched off. By November 2020, as mentioned, all non-levy contracts will end, with all funding for non-levy employers to be held on the Apprenticeship Service. Those people would have had an uplift in March time. From January 2020, the online Apprenticeship Service was open to smaller employers, more specifically to those businesses who do not pay the apprenticeship levy. Small businesses can now access funding by creating their own Apprenticeship Service account. So moving on to a little bit around the Apprenticeship Service. Once your smaller employers have opened up an account on the Apprenticeship Service, they will see the service following. So on there you can see ways in which a smaller employer can actually access funding. So they can reserve apprenticeship funding to upskill their workforce, they can bring on new apprentices, they can connect with large levy paying organisations, they can find an apprenticeship provider, and you'll all know this anyway in terms of the process that we're looking at. The Apprenticeship Service has been developed to look at new ways to working to encourage better partnership with employers. We want to give employers real-time view on apprenticeship funds. We want to allow one conversation with a partnership relationship with employers outside the SFA involvement. We want an easy-to-use online platform to support employer engagement. We want the ability to support employers through their apprenticeship journey. Obviously, the transition period for smaller employers is very vast, because you've got an organisation who potentially has to get a ton of steel out the door. They're not really going to be bothered about an apprenticeship account. The SFA recognise this, and that's why further on in the slides we'll talk about that, on how you guys can support your employers. So obviously we're just going to go through the impact and the end of the non-levy contract allocations. I apologise if I can't cover everything, because I am covering somebody who has got technical difficulties. So what are we looking at in terms of with the end of non-levy contract allocations? Obviously those any providers who still have the non-levy allocations, and particularly those obviously that you've had uplift. The majority of providers will be looking at how will this affect your business and what measures can be put in place to recover the loss of funds. I think at the moment there are other issues to try and retain learners on programme. Obviously we've got Dale later on, but actually where are we looking at in terms of making the transition easier? So obviously looking at business continuity and income future proofing. If you just give a bit of an overview, 2018-19, the non-levy contract value nationally was around about £222 million. That's on average about 557 per provider. We know within the West Midlands not everybody got a non-levy contract, and obviously the subcontracting. However, obviously phasing out the non-levy contracts equals £500,000 per year of future revenue no longer available. At present, with the Apprenticeship Service, from January to March, the maximum that you can reserve is 3 apprenticeships, as you all know. However, this may relax post-April. Obviously, depending on the COVID situation, that may be delayed slightly. Also, what you can do at the moment, which again, for those that aren't au fait with the levy transfers, you can do that and access it through the levy transfer on the digital account. So I've looked at the best and worst case scenarios really for the majority of providers. So best case scenario, if a provider secures a small business client with a maximum of 3 apprentices at the highest value of 27k, this will deliver 27k of income per year based on a 3-year apprenticeship. To replace the non-levy revenue stream, a provider would need to secure 60 apprenticeships across a client portfolio of 20 smaller businesses. Worst case scenario, smaller businesses traditionally engage with 1 or 2 apprenticeships at one time, and statistics show that level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships make up 81% of the apprenticeships in the smaller market. This means that a provider will have to engage with 111 smaller businesses to secure on average apprenticeship value of £5,000. Once the training provider has fully spent their funding contracts, new contracts obviously will not be awarded. Instead, a smaller employer will reserve funding, and I know some of you guys are already doing that at the moment, which we thank you for, because the transition has been quite difficult really onto those. So, quality and compliance. In order to ensure you as providers remain compliant and uphold quality, there are measures that you can all take so you are not risk of breach of both quality and compliance. If a provider who is using the apprenticeship service to access funding, process an apprenticeship, but this smaller employer either doesn't have a registered account, or the provider has not clicked the button to approve apprenticeships, or there isn't an accurate start and the end dates are not matching on the ILR, and the apprenticeship details and values are not accurate, or there are delays in approving cohorts, then the apprenticeship service will be delayed in terms of payments. I think the guys that have done levy transfer with me at the moment, that's an issue obviously that we face in order to try and make sure that you click the process in the right order, in the right time, in a timely manner by the 4th working day of the month. So yeah, that's something that really you need to make sure from a quality and compliance perspective that you get involved not only the business development team, but also the compliance and MIS teams as well. What the Apprenticeship Service does not allow you to do is retrospectively put on start dates to be entered. This will cause a lot of compliance issues, and obviously, as we all know, we get the DLOC errors and the ILR errors. So just need to make sure that actually your processes are slick. Looking at provider and front-end processes, I think in order to ensure the process of onboarding apprentices runs smoothly, providers, it's a good time for you to kind of sit down, take stock, have a little look at your processes. So actually have a little look in order to show that can you support an employer to set up an account on the Apprenticeship Service and ESFA. As a provider, it's key that you need to be obtaining the account ID. If an apprenticeship is funded by a levy transfer, then an apprenticeship connection needs to happen with your levy donor before you add the learner. Learner to be added by the employer once the provider has completed the learner details needs to be approved in a timely fashion, as we've mentioned, the 4th working day. And funding can only be reserved by an employer in a 3-month period. For example, if you've got a September start, then that learner to be added June and July. We're hoping post-April that we'll be able to access more in terms of that. And again, once the processes have been completed, the operations team can then add it to the MIS systems. This is just to make sure that the processes run smoothly. And again, we've done some training, particularly at the Combined Authority, with the MIS team as well as the business development team, just to make sure we've got a joined up approach. So a couple of smaller employer facts for you around the businesses, and again, most of you will know this already. There are currently 2.6 smaller employers in England, and the ESFA and the Department for Education recognise that to reach this volume of businesses to communicate in the way that these businesses will engage in the future is a really significant task. That's why we've enlisted the likes of yourselves and also intermediaries in order to support and on board with the employers. And as we know, day to day, last thing on their mind is about recruitment, retraining, or training, and actually bringing on new apprentices. So yeah, we need to make sure the transition periods are quite slick, really. 60% of the workforce are employed by smaller employers who all have traditionally been big engagers of apprenticeships, mostly predominantly level 2, level 3. And I think the apprenticeship reforms will see some fundamental changes to the way that employers will engage with apprenticeships moving forward. Currently, there are 240,000 smaller employers in the West Midlands. In terms of those, you can see the graphics, around about 96% of those are in the 0 to 50 category. So those figures won't be a shock to you guys in terms of the marketplace. So give you a little bit of progress so far. So the progress of the project so far has seen us develop a national intermediary and provider engagement plan. So the NSAR are working closely with the ESFA to establish a large network in a very short space of time. Bearing in mind that their project mobilised in December, and then they've got an end date of 31st of March. So they've done quite a significant feat really in terms of trying to gather and do toolkits, do a variety of microsites. So I think they've done a really good job, and hopefully you guys will like the back end and the fact sheets that you can support with as well. If you have a little look from a national perspective in terms of how this is done, you'll see on the slide map of how they've broken down the regions in England. They've aligned it to the way that the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy and the Apprenticeship Ambassadors structure their region. They've again broken this down further by LEP partnerships. So as you'll again be aware, there are 38 LEPs, and within each region, there's significantly more intermediaries and providers to mobilise and scale. They've recruited partnership leads, which some of you may have been aware with Amanda Cleary, to engage with intermediaries in assigned clusters. Partnership leads are really well connected in the region and experienced within the apprenticeships, which means we can respond well to the tight timescales and fast-paced nature of the project. And I think we've seen that already with Amanda coming on board. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a list of all the activities and resources that are either developed or in development. And to date, they have engaged with 366 intermediaries across England. They've been presenting at 56 employer and intermediary events, and they've delivered a plan for, I believe, 49 intermediary and provider masterclasses. However, obviously, in light of the current coronavirus situation, a lot of their planned events have now converted to a webinar, this being one of them. And I will say this is one of the first provider ones, along with the masterclass that we did on the 6th of March, I believe. The additional challenge we face is supporting business continuity, particularly smaller businesses, and training providers will need to change behaviours. And I think again that's the main thing, because you are going to be having to do that as part of your onboarding. But also we need to protect new ways of carry on business as usual and get ahead of the game. Hence why we're doing the intermediary and provider webinars this month. So providers, just wanted to obviously talk about some operational and business development suggestions that potentially you could look at as part of your onboarding. For you all to retain the employers you're working with and to ensure you remain key in your area of sector, you need to look at what's that business service proposition that you can achieve with the employers. Obviously, as part of the process, it's ensuring that making sure that you add and register your clients. So they have to go through the government gateway ID, and we'll go through that later on. Offer a managed service. So can you, as part of your onboarding, look at how do you support that employer from start to finish, and design this as part of your onboarding as mentioned before. So in terms of enhancing business development, I think that's a key area, and there's a little bit of task later on in terms of supporting for that. So based on obviously what we've said there, I think something to take away with you today, and usually we would have done this on a face-to-face, I know Sarah and the team would have done this more a bit of a, you know, in terms of a lesson plan, but actually it's about taking time and exploring time on what you're going to do differently. So have a little look about what you're going to do differently in your role to support the changes to benefit both your organisation and smaller clients. What changes or processes do you see that will help support smaller employers with the apprenticeship service? And then obviously what key information you'll take away from the session today. We will re-record this because obviously you get myself instead of the experts. However, I obviously want to still go through that with you. Okay, so introducing the Making Apprenticeship Works for Employers Toolkit. And this is something really I found exciting from a combined authority perspective, because there are some great resources available to you as providers and smaller businesses. So there's several resources in the developments, but let's go through what is on offer. So there is currently a toolkit and tools section that is pending approval with the SFA. There are practical resources for employers and providers on how you can use this. There will be how-to guides, step-by-step instructions on how you register on the apprenticeship service, and how to use different functions on an employer apprenticeship service account. And now obviously I've been meeting with you guys, going out and looking at training, particularly around Levy Transfer, but actually they've gone through the next step. So hopefully I know that will help in terms of the onboarding. If you have a little look on the highlighted 8 tools, you'll just see likely the most used tools whilst employers and providers get used to using the apprenticeship service. So those will be available as fact sheets downloadable, so you can print them off and give them to your smaller employers. But again, it's perhaps looking at that training session with your business development team or your MIS team about how does the system work. They've developed a microsite, so that microsite touches on a hub to store the toolkit and other resources, which are downloadable once you've registered your details. The site will be user-friendly and there are links, tools and videos to help providers and employers navigate their way through the changes. The link to the website is at the bottom of the page. Please, if you can all register your details on the microsite so you have access, and once the tools have been completed, you will be updated within the next couple of weeks of those going live. We're hoping, I've been told by NSAR that are hoping for a little bit earlier than that. So yeah, if you can, jump on there, register, and then you'll be able to start downloading some of the tools there. So just having a little look at the call to action. If you can, at West Midlands smaller businesses, register onto the apprenticeship service. Also have a little look at any employer case studies. So NSAR are looking for opportunities to showcase some of the good practice that's out there. And actually, if you are coming across any issues, please feed that to Amanda Cleary, which will pop on the email later on, just to obviously try and overcome, or we can feed back to the education and skills funding agencies. And again, it's all about how we share feedback, how we share learnings, and just make this process easier. You'll see also there's some ESFA videos. You've got provider organisations, employers, how they can reserve funding. Again, you guys have been quite good within the West Midlands in terms of reserving funding, and then there's contact detail for Sarah, Amanda and the team there for you. I am going to go through Levy Transfer. So for those who have already heard this, thank you and welcome again. For those who haven't, hopefully you will learn something from today. Have a little look at how do we support in terms of Levy Transfer. I have dropped everybody an email, but for those that aren't on our distribution list of combined authority, what I will say is that we are relaxing in terms of our core priority areas, and I think that's something that we considered, whereby we want to support our providers and our colleges, but we also want to look at how do we support the employers. So if we can support with Levy Transfer for the 5%, we have opened it up now to all standards, all levels. So this is usually our core priority areas, but we will accept everything at the moment as long as it's within the West Midlands. So what's the benefit to the Levy Transfer? And I think other combined authorities are currently doing that on a national basis. We were one of the first, along with Greater Manchester, kind of kick off with the Levy Transfer. In terms of where we are as an organisation, actually, why did we set up the Levy Transfer? Just to give a bit of background. We set this up back in April 2019. really alongside with the Mayor and Street of the West Midlands to look at how do we reinvest funding back into the region. I think by August this year, I'm led to believe, somebody will tell me different, please do update me. Previously, I know there's about £400 million went back to national government. And actually, as a region, we want to reinvest that money where possible. You guys are going out, you guys are engaging with the smaller businesses, you're doing a fantastic job. And actually, we want to look at how do we fund that. So we've currently got 22, I believe, maybe 23 now, large levy paying employers who are supporting the Levy Transfer initiative. They came to me and said, Louise, we haven't got the internal resource to do that. We haven't got the time to do that. That's where we sit in. That's where we looked at a broker model whereby we're more of the conduit between yourselves and also the large levy paying employers. Fantastic, great. So where we currently are at the moment with £16 million, currently spent around about £5 million profiled. So we've got a long way to go. So obviously I can't do that on my own. I need you guys. But actually, if we can support in any way with the 5% co-investment, why wouldn't we go down this route in terms of levy transfer? And actually, a lot of the levy paying employers said to us, you know, we want to be looking at how do we support our residents, how do we support our businesses, and it hits a lot of their corporate and social responsibility. So it's a bit of a win-win for everybody, really. Ultimately, though, we wanted to look at, in terms of levy paying employers, whilst that's fantastic, we want to make sure that we have an impact to our smaller businesses. Some of you would have seen, if you're on my LinkedIn, I know I bore people with it. Actually, we've got some nice human interest stories. So we've got some nice smaller businesses and nice smaller interests around how is this benefiting residents within the West Midlands. So keep an eye out for those. We'll be getting some more coming through. And then smaller businesses, obviously, they need you guys to help them through in terms of whether it's creating a digital account, whether it's allocating funding for the Apprenticeship Service, or indeed through Levy Transfer. So that's why we want to try and equip you guys as much as possible. And I know NSR are doing that as well. Again, I think at the moment, obviously, a lot of recruitment and providers will be hit with the recruitment, unfortunately, whereby people are putting hold on their recruitment piece. But actually, when we do get to the end, and there will be an end, actually it's about how are they going to bring on new talent. And I think it's critical really to preempt post COVID-19. Actually, we probably need to be bringing in apprentices to kind of build up the business again. And again, you know, in terms of cost savings, so, you know, with the economic climate as it is at the moment, we want to make sure that 100% costs are covered, and that's anywhere from £150 to £350, £1,350, which you guys already know anyway. It's great, we've still got you all online. None of you have dropped off. I haven't bored you today. Thank you. So what this was dedicated, so again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think all of you know Mayor's apprenticeship commitment is around £40 million by 2026. 26. He wants to increase the SME Apprenticeship Demand, as you will all know. Figures have significantly dropped since the levy was introduced. And actually, how do we, as a collective across the West Midlands, increase that smaller business demand? Obviously, there was a hole in the funding for non-levy, which is a real impact on demand. But actually, the transition onto the Apprenticeship Service should actually see that you know, all being well, obviously, that actually we can then start growing apprenticeships. But we don't know in the current climate what's going to happen. So just give you a little bit of areas. I know this comes up quite a lot with training providers. I didn't really want to go down the route of postcodes. I think there's enough funding pots out there where you have to kind of cross-reference with postcode, and that's not in, and that's not in. The easiest way to look at this is actually those areas that are highlighted on there. So you've got the Birmingham and Black Country LEP. Sorry, Birmingham, Solihull LEP. Excuse me a minute. You've got Coventry and Warwickshire LEP, Greater Birmingham, Solihull, and the Marches. So somebody asked today, you've got Redditch and Bromsgrove and White Forest covering those. So yes, we will cover those. However, Worcestershire, so the Worcester, we will not cover, unfortunately. It doesn't come under the West Midlands Combined Authority Partnership Scheme. So that should be fairly straightforward. It's quite a lot of area to go after. So again, if you have employers out in that area, trying to get them over the line, and actually we can support them with the 5% co-investment. More than happy to bring them through this process. So, West Midlands Combined Authority Levy Transfer funding criteria. If we weren't in COVID, we would be looking at all 16 to 18-year-olds supporting all standards, all levels, and that's predominantly for STEM, digital, accountancy, construction. I'm not going to go through these, guys, because I think you guys can read that. But it'll just give you an idea of those are the core priority areas. So once this is over, we will switch back to that. But at the moment, we want to support all levy transfer. And again, remember, it's only for standards. We can't do it for frameworks. We've also partnered with all of our local authorities. So this is something that we're going to be launching. Was potentially in April, it may be put back to May. However, again, we want to try and support all of our local authorities. So they have levy transfer also. So I'll go through those. So you've got Dudley Metropolitan Council. They're predominantly looking at supporting level 2 to level 7 in 4 key priority areas: childcare, healthcare, advanced engineering. Coventry City Council. Again, they will support residents and businesses at level 2 to level 7, but they have 5 key priority areas. Predominantly care leavers, young people, NEET, parents or those returning to work, people with disabilities and BAME. Like I said, if you are, don't get too hung up on this at the moment because we are supporting all of the areas. But again, it's something to think about when we come out of COVID. Warwickshire County Council, those are their core priority areas. And Sandwell Metropolitan Council as well. Their team are actually supporting smaller businesses to engage as part of the programme, so they're willing to go out and support also alongside you guys as providers. So these are some of the levy transfer employer partners that we have on board. You can see we've got some national clients as well as regional, and actually we think it's quite important to try and look at how do we make sure that we maximise all of that. So just to give everybody a bit of an idea of where we are in terms of spend, so we've got £16 million pledged over the next 3 years. Out of that, we have supported, and that's thanks to you guys, 150 smaller businesses. We've also supported 357 learners, I believe, and we're just short of £5 million in terms of planned spend. So obviously, where possible, appreciate numbers may drop now, but obviously where possible, this can be used as an additional resource really to try and encourage people to do work from home. Transferring model, we did ask whether we could pool the money as part of the combined authority. Unfortunately, it's not possible, so I act as a conduit really, so whereby you guys will liaise with myself and I'll liaise with the larger employers. Where possible, in terms of the transferring model, we look at timelines. So the 20th of each month, we ask for referrals sent across. It's key that we have the account ID from the smaller employer. Without that, we cannot ask the large levy payers to transfer. So we ask that you send that over. I then have send them over to all the levy donors. Once the levy donors have agreed it, and unfortunately sometimes it takes a week for them to approve it, from there, I will then be sending out provider reports. So please do bear with us. I will send reports out around about the 29th to the 31st of the month. That will then give you enough time to raise the cohort, your MIS team to add the ULN learner details and send that back to the smaller business. Levy donors usually, and I do say usually because they have been taken up elsewhere, will go in and connect that for you straight away. That should give you a bit of the modelling behaviours. But Amanda Cleary will support on levy transfer, as well as obviously in terms of getting on board with the Apprenticeship Service. Useful links, they are quite old now. I think NSAR have got some better links, and I think also NSAR have got some more visual tools. I have come out and trained most of you. If anybody hasn't, then Amanda is available up until the 31st and potentially afterwards to support you as a business in order to do that. A little bit around COVID. Obviously, many of us will be concerned about the impact of the business. I know there'll be a lot of questions in regards to apprenticeship update from the ESFA. We have been in touch with them. We have discussed with them. I know there's been quite a lot of webinars going around nationally. I know FE Week have done one, AELP. Can I just remind you that just to go to the ESFA and DFE apprenticeship policy update, we are aware that they are looking at concerns and we are raising them with the ESFA, and I know one of the ladies is listening at the moment. So any concerns or anything in terms of scenarios, please can you email them to me and I will raise that, to which then the Minister is going to be looking at all of those. And again, there's just some useful links which I think everybody would have seen anyway in terms of that. So there's policy update. We will be sending out contact details. So frequently asked questions. There are some frequently asked questions on the DFE and policy update. Again, I'll be reviewing that and updating that regularly. So keep a lookout for that. I think we're all getting the COVID updates, about 10 emails a day at the moment. I am going to hand you over. So apologies you had me for the whole of that time. I'm going to hand you over to Dale Walker, who's the Curriculum Manager at Apprentify.
Hello, everyone. So yeah, my name's Dale. I'm the Curriculum Manager for an apprenticeship training provider called Apprentify. I've been asked to come on today to talk a little bit about our delivery model for our apprenticeship. I appreciate that I might be preaching to the choir in this room and you might be doing some of the things that I am talking about already, but I will leave my contact details on these slides. So if there are any questions in the aftermath of this, then by all means, please do just feel free to contact me. We've been through as a business over the last 18 months, 2 years, quite an interesting process in terms of delivering and developing an apprenticeship model, which is entirely online. Which lended very well to the apprenticeship standards that we deliver. But I'll walk you through a little bit of the journey that we've been on, and hopefully you can pick up some ideas for your own programs. But like I said, if there are any questions, either in this session or subsequently, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much. So just a little bit of background about Apprentify. Apprentify was set up in 2018. When we started the business, we decided to run the entire apprenticeship model remotely. There was a couple of challenges with that and a couple of reasons we went down that road. The main one for us was that the apprenticeship standard that we offered at the time, the Level 3 Digital Marketer, which we've expanded upon since then, lended very well to remote delivery, and it allowed us to do the apprenticeship standard and to deliver the entirety of the apprenticeship standard using a variety of different technologies and tools. That isn't to say that we have no physical or face-to-face contact with our employers, and that is still part of our delivery model. But the model that we decided to go with predominantly was remote, mainly on 3 key areas. So before we started designing the entire apprenticeship, we did a lot of research before getting off the ground about some of the pains that employers were having from the apprenticeships that they'd had. I previously used to work for a large national training provider. We had 4,500 learners and across academies across the entirety of the UK. And one of the common pains that we got from employers was that apprentices were out of the workplace for too long, and they wanted to be able to get more transparency from training providers in terms of the training that they were getting. They didn't want apprentices going out of the office quite so much, and they wanted that flexibility in terms of the training that was being offered. And they wanted to know what we as a training provider could offer them that was different to other training providers. So using that feedback that we got, we then went and designed a training program that was built around virtual classrooms, e-learning that is bespoke to different tools and technologies, and the different workplace coaching sessions that we offer as well. So when we set up the program, there were a couple of questions that we had to answer right at the beginning, because setting up a virtual apprenticeship or remote apprenticeship isn't just as simple as perhaps setting up a webinar software. A lot of you might be using tools like Slack or Microsoft Teams, especially in the COVID crisis, to communicate across the workplace. And it's not just as simple as just running webinar sessions, because as I'm sure you will know from attending webinars in the past, that you can switch off and they can be quite disengaging. So you want to be able to, as much as possible, replicate the features of a classroom. So a couple of the questions that we really had to delve into the depths of when we were setting up: how do we replicate these features? How do we ensure learner engagement in the classrooms that we run? How do you monitor that in real time during the classroom? I can't physically see the students. How do I know that they're there? How do I know that they're paying attention? How do I know that I'm actually making an impact upon the learning that they are supposed to be getting from my session? So ultimately, when I'm in front of an employer, I know what that apprentice has done, and I know where they're at, and I know that they've actually made that progress. What reporting does the system provide? Obviously, all of us are subject and due to get an ESFA auditor at any point, so we need to make sure that the system actually provides compliance and actually provides quality of information, so that when our compliance teams are sat in front of an auditor, they are confident in the robustness of the data that the system is providing. And how do we meet ESFA requirements for delivery as well? So not just in terms of the quality of the training, does it meet the apprenticeship standard, but is it actually good enough training for meeting the requirements of in-learning evidence as well? And does it allow you to embed your functional skills? Does it allow you to encourage wider learning and meet the new requirements of the education inspection framework as well? So there were a lot of considerations that we had to make right at the beginning, and those were the four main questions that we had. Now, when you're setting up your program, obviously traditional apprenticeship models, you're getting apprentices coming in face to face. There's a lot of paper, right? There's a lot of paper, there's a lot of signatures, and I have some horrible memories of going out to all sorts of employers over the years and getting signatures face to face from employers, managers, stakeholders, and whoever else was involved. Most end-to-end apprenticeship systems now won't require that. There are a couple of big players in the market. I'm thinking of the likes of your OneFiles, your Buds, your Aptems, and even going a little bit further back to your Smart Assessors. There are all sorts of systems out there that will provide this functionality. Electronic signatures are completely compliant with ESFA audits now, and most of them are built into these end-to-end systems. And I'm going to be going into a couple of these end-to-end systems in a minute, because we at Apprentify use two of them. What you want to consider as well is that the system ties into your ILR upload, so that you are getting your drawdown and you're getting the maximum drawdown from your ILR, and if that's tied into the delivery that you're offering as well. And it's all automated. The more you can automate it, the better. The key consideration we had was around virtual classroom software, because something like I'm on now, so a GoToMeeting or a GoToWebinar, that will only keep your learners engaged to a point that's very didactic. It's not as engaging as you want it to be. You can just pick up on my accent and the sort of tone of voice, but that'll only keep you engaged so far. So you need to invest in a quality platform that actually provides, I would say, as a minimum, the following functions. So webcam functionality. So as I'm talking right now, I've got my laptop and my webcam is in front of me, which I can turn on if I want. But you also want to be able to provide external devices. If some of you delivering more traditional apprenticeships, more manual apprenticeships, I'm thinking things like engineering, electrician, even some of the the more digital apprenticeships, you will need a software that allows you to connect to an external camera, especially if you're doing product demonstrations, if you're doing one-on-one tutorials, or whatever you're doing, you're going to be able to need not just the functionality of a webcam or screen sharing. So not every software provides that. Breakout rooms, so that as you would do in a physical classroom, you can actually put a learner into groups or put learners into different groups. That allows you to turn microphones and webcams on so that those learners are working on a group project before bringing them back into the main room. Question and answers, polls, different functions built into your software, so you can check learning as you're going along, but also so that you can increase engagement. The more you can get learners doing stuff on the computer, the better. The more that they have to sit there and just listen to you or watch you, the more they'll disengage. So make sure it's got those extra functions and features as well. Your whiteboard software, whiteboards, very, very simple, a piece of a classroom. Not every piece of technology has them built into it. So, like I say, I've mentioned the Microsoft Teams, that doesn't have it built in. So you want to consider how you get that engagement and how you can get learners to contribute to a shared space. The big one for me is engagement reports. So is your system robust enough so that it allows you to see not only after the session, but in real time, is that trainer or is that learner engaged? If you know that the learner is not engaged at that point, they're not paying attention, they are away from their desk or away from their keyboard, that's how you manage the room effectively. So my best advice is investing into a system that has that report built into it. We use Adobe Connect, and I know that a lot of providers that I've spoken to when we were doing our research also use Adobe Connect. It does provide all the features that I've mentioned above, so I don't want to act like a salesperson for Adobe Connect, but it does work well. There are systems that also provide these functions, and they obviously range in price. So depending on your depending on your model and depending on how much you want to invest into these remote delivery options, you need to consider the price of it. Adobe Connect is very affordable for what it offers, so I do recommend it. But again, depending on your budget, you might want to spend a little bit more. If you want some extra advice on this, then just give me a shout, like I said. Yeah, thank you. So obviously you want them tied into your e-portfolio system where possible. Now, portfolio systems have increased in sophistication and functionality over the years. What you really want to invest into, if you're going to do this properly, is a system that has not only the e-portfolio in terms of where the learner is going to meet the KSBs for the apprenticeship, but also has the learning activities built into it, as well as the ILR. Again, reducing admin for compliance, and for your delivery staff as well. You don't want them uploading evidence all the time if they don't have to. You want that learner to take ownership of that program. We use two different systems. Both have their plus points, but both have the drawbacks. Our main system is Bud, but for a subcontracting relationship that we have, we also use Aptem. Both of them provide this functionality that I'm alluding to. So the ILR all comes from the system, as well as all the learning activities, evidence, feedback, QA, all built into the system as well. So again, it improves that transparency for delivery staff because they know where the learners are at in real time at any point. But more than anything, it's this end-to-end approach, and it means that the learner can be enrolled into the system, all the paperwork lives in the system. You can refer back to the paperwork, their commitment statement, their apprenticeship agreement, and then take them all the way through right to endpoint assessment. Now, I don't know everyone in the room, but I imagine a lot of you are delivering more traditional, hands-on, not even necessarily office-based apprenticeships in the way that I and Apprentify are. So you might be thinking to yourself, how do we actually deliver a model like this when my apprentice is out on the field or with certain types of hardware that you're not even slightly alluding to? How do we deliver effective coaching sessions or one-to-one workplace sessions when we don't have the luxury of being a digital apprenticeship like you are, Dale? Well, I completely get that point. One of the things that I would say in terms of how you adapt this model for absolutely every type of apprenticeship and every program that you could offer is knowing that apprenticeship standard inside out, and predominantly and mainly that assessment plan. Because knowing the apprenticeship standard and the assessment plan inside out gives you that opportunity, regardless of the standard, to deliver something remotely. Now, we have the benefit of being able to deliver the entire apprenticeship remotely and the entire program remotely. Not every program might work that way, but there's still going to be things that you can do that's going to save you time, it's going to save you money, and it's going to make you more efficient as a business in terms of delivering those coaching sessions. So most apprenticeships in some way, shape or form will offer some form of professional discussion as part of their endpoint assessment. Definitely opportunities to deliver that via virtual means. Industry developments, can you deliver drop-in sessions where apprentices can talk about different updates in the industry, legislation, regulations, even new technologies and tools have been brought out. Different online softwares that you may or may not use. That could be, if you're an accounting apprentice, different updates to so payroll, Sage, things like that. If you're working in a more traditional environment, that could well be, I'm thinking things like CAD design, for your more design-based apprenticeships and for construction. Practical demonstrations, again, that could be via the webcam so that you can see myself actually doing a particular session, and then the learner could actually, or a group of learners could potentially, using the same equipment in their workplace, also do that thing. And then finally, screen shares. If you were using if you were doing a one-to-one coaching session, you can walk the learner through how to use particular pieces of software. I know personally we do sessions on Google Analytics, which is an online platform we use for digital marketing. It works very well just to share your screen and then walking through it. The 20% off the job rule, there's always a little bit of confusion about this, whether you're a provider or an employer. So 20% off the job is totally compliant with remote-based training sessions. So the definition of off-the-job training, as I'm sure you're all aware, training received by the apprentice during the apprentice's normal working hours for the purpose of achieving the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the approved apprenticeship agreement. As long as you can make a direct reference to the KSB for your online training session, and that's clearly mapped into your delivery, it's absolutely off the job. A lot of people worry that if I'm not very physically teaching it, or there are some, I've definitely heard compliance staff or delivery staff say to me in the past that any delivery session has to be done face-to-face, or it's non-compliant, or it's not off the job. That's not necessarily true at all. If you read the guidance then from the ESFA, then absolutely off the job can happen via remote means, and especially in the current day and age as we are all enduring now. Just be very clear about what KSB you're covering in your session. So using your standard, using your associated document, if there are things like occupational briefs or further guidance from EPAOs to help you deliver that apprenticeship effectively. So a bit of a whistle-stop tour about how we've gone about our apprenticeship. Like I said, if there are any questions, then please do ask. But we found we get very good engagement from not only our apprentices, but great feedback from our employers as well. So it is a model which absolutely can be employed, but in the time that you're in right now, you might very well have some further questions on this as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dale. Yeah, just wanted to thank Dale Walker really for coming on board. We asked him quite last minute really in terms of, we want to look at delivery models, we want to look at how we can do flexible delivery, and actually how we can all work together to try and learn from one another. So hopefully you enjoyed that session, and like I say, where possible, we want to kind of share the best practice that's out there to try and aid everybody really. So yeah, that's the area covered. I appreciate we are slightly running over by 9 minutes, apologies. But yeah, thank you for the time today. Thank you to Dale Walker from Apprentify. If you have any questions, anything relating to the Apprenticeship Service, by all means, please email apprenticeships@ensar.co.uk. Amanda Cleary will be able to assist you and help in terms of apprenticeship account. We will be emailing all the questions you've asked and also sending the replies out. So if you have got any questions, please pop them on there. I'm sorry we haven't got time to do them because we have run over slightly. And I know probably everyone's wall-to-wall conference calls at the moment. So yeah, if you pop them on there, we will send them off to the ESFA for official response and obviously some queries. Any concerns, anything that you've got coming up, anything in terms of scenarios that you have with apprentices, feel free to either mail them also to myself and I'll send them over to the ESFA. That's it, guys. Thank you for your time today. And yeah, I'll see you all soon.